Let's introduce our candidates. In alphabetical order, Mr. Scott Bowman. Mr. Clark Durant. Mr. Gary Glenn. Mr. Randy Heckman. Mr. Pete Hoekstra. Mr. Pete Canacci. Also attending our forum, but not included in the forum because of a late response, or we were not aware of their candidacy, Mr. Chuck Marino, Mr. Rick Wilson. Now let's begin our forum. We will ask the first question to the candidates in alphabetical order. Mr. Bowman, question number 1. Why do you desire to run for U.S. Senate?
I see liberty lovers. We treasure our right to free speech. Back in the day, people used to say, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it. Whenever people would try to silence you, you could assert your right to free speech without having to prove that you were correct. We tolerate people who say objectionable things because we expect to be tolerated. You have a freedom you cherish. It may be different than the freedom your neighbor cherishes. But together, we can be stronger if we turn to one another and say, I may not like what you do, but I'll defend your right to do it. But what if what a person does violates their liberty? Well, that's why we need government. But we no longer have a government who strictly defends our liberty. Most politicians have been speaking to your inner tyrant and getting you to neglect the liberties of your neighbor just so that you can protect the liberties that you cherish. Problem is, your neighbor has been doing the same thing. You create the wealth with your mind that whatever you get is voluntary, by honest voluntary exchange, is an extension of your life. So when you hear a voice in your head that says, there ought to be a law, ask yourself, does that law respect the right of others to live for their own sake? If a law takes your property, it takes away your past. If it denies your choices, it takes away your present. And if it takes your life, it violates your future. Current laws pillage our past, present, and future. I wish to change that. I'm Scotty Bowman.
Mr. Durant, question number 1. Why do you desire to run for U.S. Senate?
I want to run for the United States Senate because I tremble for my country. When we had a family meeting, our youngest son said to me, when all of us were together, Dad, it's your generation, both Republicans and Democrats, that have caused our country to be on the brink of an economic disaster. And you told us when we were young that if we made a mistake, we had to correct it. If we broke something, we had to fix it. And if we started something, we had to finish it. So Dad, get in there and finish it. I'm also running because our party, the Republican Party, was founded on a very important question. Will our nation exist half slave or half free? That question was answered by Abraham Lincoln and the Republicans to say, we must be free. And the Whig Party, that had elected 3 presidents, went to the wayside because they were unable and unwilling to deal with the fundamental question. The fundamental question confronting our country and our party is, where are you on the question of this enormous increase in spending in debt? Spending in debt that will enslave our children, our grandchildren, and make our country lose the American way. And there is a clear choice in this primary and in this election between whether or not we are going to go the American way for freedom or the Washington way that has voted for countless increases in debt and spending that is crippling our children. And I am running because it's time for freedom to be given a chance. God bless you all for being here tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Glenn, why do you desire to run for U.S. Senate?
Fellow Americans, my father was a Marine who survived the attack on Pearl Harbor. He taught me not just by word, but by the example of his life, to love my country, to stand up for what I believe in, to be willing to fight for what I believe in. And everything that you and I love about America, I believe, is at imminent risk from within. Our liberty, our strength and security, our moral foundation, our free enterprise economy. I believe that if we give Debbie Stabenow and Barack Obama another term and let them have an opportunity to finish the job and their agenda, they threaten to rob our children of their birthright of freedom and turn our country into the United Socialist States of America. And we and our children may never get a free country back. I swore an oath as an Eagle Scout to do my best to do my duty to God and my country. And 20 years later, I took another oath when I enlisted during the Persian Gulf War buildup to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Those oaths still mean something to me still today. And finally, I'm running because I don't think Republicans can beat Debbie Stabenow. If our nominee is a former congressman who voted in favor of the Wall Street bailout to raise the debt ceiling to $11 trillion, for earmarks like the Bridge to Nowhere, for the Brady Bill gun control law, and has a history of being funded by Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters and opposing state and national right-to-work laws. We need a candidate instead that Tea Party activists can work their hearts out for. I have volunteered to serve my country before. I volunteer again tonight. And I submit to you my application for membership in the Tea Party caucus of the United States Senate. God bless you and God bless America.
Mr. Heckman, why do you desire to run for U.S. Senate?
Thank you, and I'm pleased to respond to that question. First of all, let me just say how thankful I am to be here. Many of you are familiar. We've seen you as we've traveled through the state. And as many of you have known who have heard me speak before, I'm running for this role as U.S. Senator of Michigan, not because of some great thought that I want to be a U.S. Senator, but because we're at desperate times in our nation today. It's already been stated by these prior gentlemen, and it's absolutely true. We stand at a great crisis. A little bit of my background: I'm a Navy officer, former Navy officer and vet. I served in the Pentagon, returned to Michigan after law school and the Navy, was a prosecutor, elected as judge at age 27, again, not because I had some great thought of being a judge the rest of my life, but because juvenile court in Kent County was broken. Believe it or not, back in the 70s when I ran at age 27, youngest judge in the state at the time, they were actually rewarding young felons who had broken the law. They received virtually no punishment, no community service work, were simply placed back in their homes, and were actually paid if they went to school the next day. I said, this is wrong. And I was a nobody from nowhere, and I ran, and I got 55% of the vote against a well-known incumbent. And we were able to make the changes and see the crime rate come down. Well, we have a much bigger issue here with the debt and so on that we'll be talking about tonight. But I have the same sense of calling. I love our country, and I cannot sit on the sidelines and let our country go over the cliff. So I'm doing what I can do to bring people together from all sides of the state and to say, let's fix this before it's too late for the sake of our kids. We have 12 kids, by the way, and our grandkids, 21. In fact, my wife, I got 10 seconds. Stand up. This is my bride. She had all 12 of those kids. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hoekstra, why do you desire to run for U.S. Senate?